Welcome to 216, A Link to the Past podcast. I am your guest host, TracieM. First of all, I'd like to thank Fear Agent for giving me this opportunity. So far, it has been a blast. League playoffs are moving along with Invitational almost into their conference finals. Fear Agent's team, your mom's favorite rando team, playing their Game 3 against Don't Forget to Track Us on Tuesday to round out the conference finals that already include To Infinity and Pagog, Last Location Years, and Potato Pouch. The Open League also finishing up their round 2, heading towards conference semis since they have one extra round to play. Lots of tournaments about to start, including the co-op Cross Keys tournament hosted by the 216 podcast. Regular enrollment should be open now with a 64-team limit. Register in the 216 Discord. Also, this weekend in football, it's my 49ers versus Fear's Seahawks. Had to mention it since we're up against each other. By now, either I have full bragging rights for the season with a Niners win, or a split will ruin my day and Fear will be happy with a Hawks victory. Today, I bring you fcoughlin, i.e. Fred, who has been part of the ALTTPR scene from the very early days, having participated in the very first tournament. We also talk about his work on his own randomizers, in particular, the Zelda 1 randomizer. He has also worked extensively on the Super Mario Bros. 3 randomizer. We also find out about his time on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Wheel of Fortune. So here it is, my conversation with Fred. First of all, Fred, thank you for joining me on the 216 podcast.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So, there's a lot I have to ask, but just gaming in general. So, starting off, we'll start off as a kid, because you're closer to my age, which means you're older. Not to spoil anything.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so did you grow up playing like Nintendo and Super Nintendo?
Yeah, those were the basic consoles I had growing up. My first house I remember being at when I was growing up, it was an Atari for a little bit, and then my parents got an NES for a bit there, so I played a lot of that one. Then we moved, even though it was still in the same town, and I remember going and buying my own Super Nintendo in the early 90s, saved up over a year for that. Had to watch Fern Gully to get it that day, because that was kind of the thing. We were going to go to the store that was near the movie theater, and that was kind of the bribe to get my sisters to come along, was, okay, we're going to go watch Fern Gully in the movie theater. I still don't know how I remember that over all these years. And then we're going to go over to the store and buy and you can go buy the Super Nintendo. So I had to sit there the whole time. I was like, okay, this is not a movie I would have chosen ever, but this is my payment to get the Super Nintendo. So, okay, I'm doing it.
Oh, younger sisters?
Yeah, both are younger. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's about 5. Let's pretend I was about 10 at the time. I don't remember exactly what year it was, but if that was the case, then I had like a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old sister at the time.
Oh, so. Wow. Yeah, you're brave taking a 2-year-old to a movie.
Maybe it was 3. Maybe I'm off by a year or something like that. But, with all the animated stuff, it was like, okay.
All right. So you get the Super Nintendo. Now, of course, we know you have quite the history with Zelda 1. Did you play Zelda 1 on the original Nintendo a lot?
I played that one a good amount. I don't remember if that was one I played all the time. I remember getting through like a few of the dungeons. I remember using Game Genie a bunch because, some of those Darknut dungeons early on were just not something that I understood exactly how to fight the enemies. So
back then, they held no punches on Nintendo games. So, Z1, Z2, and the old Metroid, and like even like all the games I played. Everybody is like, oh, they're so hard. The people are playing now.
It was the mentality back then. The mentality of video games back then was, arcade.
Yes.
Pump the quarters in.
Yes,
and so
exactly.
It still translated over to
it sure
Nintendo.
Did. Yeah, it sure did. Yeah, they wanted those quarters, even though, on a console game, the quarters are pretty irrelevant. But I think it took them a while to figure that out.
Yeah, I think they were like, okay, we'll get the system. We'll put it out there so that way everyone can buy the games that they want. Because the people we're targeting right now are these people. And then they realized over time probably, hey, wait a second, casual gamers want to play, but they don't want to be dying in 1-2 every time.
Yes,
so
exactly.
We have to find that right balance.
Yeah, and it took a while to get to that. So you get the Super Nintendo. What games did you get for the Super Nintendo? I assume Super Mario World is probably an obvious
Mario
one.
World came with it, and I think I'm trying to remember because I used to know the first 5 like in order that I got. F-Zero was definitely number 2. I want to say Pilot Wings was in the top 5. I want to say Mario Kart was 5. Link to the Past was probably the fourth one, so it was in
Mhm.
like that was the 5, because I just remember being blown away by the graphics on a Super Nintendo compared to everything else there. Like actually
Oh, it was
falling out of a
totally
kitchen,
different.
yeah, actually falling out of my kitchen chair, leaning on turns,
Yeah.
going into
I believe
F-Zero.
it.
Like it literally, I remember falling out of that chair. That was like okay, yep, this thing is realistic enough in my mind. Of course, nowadays, like, okay, that's nothing, but back then, that was a
Oh yeah, like just
huge step up.
the different scrolling backgrounds on like Super Mario World and stuff like that. It's just
Oh yeah,
it
no,
was
it was
just such a huge
beautiful.
upgrade. From I remember when I played Final Fantasy 2/4, which whatever you want to call it. Some of the dungeons there where you could see the bottom, like a bottom floor, and just blown away by it. Oh yeah, and just living on Link to the Past and in other games as well.
Yeah, funny thing about that, I never actually, despite that being the first speed run for an RPG that I ever did, you know, I never actually owned that game as a kid. I played it, I think, on emulator in college. Even though I read about Nintendo Power, I was like, oh, this would be such a cool one. I never, I kept getting distracted probably when it came time to, you know, buy new games, and you know, definitely played Final Fantasy 3/6, but never got 2 there.
Yeah, that's interesting because it was one of mine. But you know, you talk about getting distracted in college. I know all about that because like 1994 for me, because that's when I went to college, is like a definite breaking point for you know playing games and not playing games, because suddenly you know you're kind of in a different world.
Oh, absolutely. Oh gosh, those college years, I played through so many different games, although then it was like, okay, I played through them for a while, and then okay, oh shoot, I gotta get my homework done and get these projects done and everything. And of course, many late nights that probably shouldn't have been late nights if I had time managed a little bit better.
Isn't that always the case?
Exactly.
Oh gosh, you know, the all-nighters and stuff. Yeah, takes me back for sure. Now, you don't just play video games. I have it on good authority that you were on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yep, that was one of the 2 game shows I was on.
And the other one?
Wheel of Fortune. So I was on Wheel of Fortune, not Wheel of Fortune, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, actually back in college. I was a sophomore, actually. I just started dating my wife like 2 months before I got on that one. But that was back when Regis was on there. They would do the, like, okay, we're open the phone lines for a week.
Yep. Yeah, I remember
people
all
call
that.
in every night and get lucky, get through the lottery. I'd gotten through the lottery to the second round a couple of times in the past and just never made it through. And then that time I happened to get lucky enough on the questions. It was just after we'd come back from a trip from New Orleans, because I was in the school pep band, and our basketball team actually made the NCAA tournament that year. So we flew down to New Orleans, got to do that, flew back, and then the next weekend, my mom and I flew to New York, of all things, from, you know, Providence, Rhode Island. So a really short flight that really almost shouldn't even be a flight.
And they pay for everything,
they
right?
paid for it. Yep, they paid for the flight. They paid for the, you know, the limo / car to drive us from the airport to the city, including the limo driver who lost the limo in the airport parking lot.
Oh my God.
You don't think of that, but he just he walks my mom and I out to the airport thing, and he's looking around. And, you know, to be fair, this was in 2001, so okay, fine, maybe a little bit. But he's standing there looking around. He's pressing the button on his key thing as he's walking around, and you hear him. You know, he has some form of a little bit of an accent. He's like, gives the bag back to my mom and says, "You two just wait here a minute." And we see him walking off one way, holding up the remote. About a minute later, we see him walking the other way, still holding up the remote, and then he heard the car beep or something, and then he came back and took the bag and brought us over. But yeah, not one of the things you usually think of when you're thinking of parking lots at an airport. Just about how many, like, you know, when you think of something like that, oh, it's a quote unquote limo, even though it wasn't a big limo, but, you know, someone should be able to find that without a problem. But apparently not everyone.
All right, so you get on the show, and you got, I mean, you didn't just, you know, you got past fastest finger. Do you remember any of the questions? Oh,
I mean, I could hit all 10 of the questions that I was from the show when I was on there, or at least at this point, maybe I don't remember all like the 100 or 200, but I remember almost all of them, you know, the questions like, you know, I think even, because the first couple they give you are totally intended to get you to laugh.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're willing to give you that $1,000 without a problem, because the idea is, you know, they want you to relax. Well, the 1,000, you know, maybe they'll be like, okay, we want to, you know, maybe we'll push you a little bit on that one. Like that one, you have to show a little something. But, you know, there were questions about, you know, which of the following was most likely to have a thumb index, which of course was a dictionary. Nowadays, of course, people would be like,
what
the heck is that? Because no one ever uses a physical
know, right?
dictionary, but things like that. I think my 1,000 was I do yada 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 was the headline for the wedding of this famous actor, and of course at the time, that's one of those ones that was nice and easy. Nowadays might be a little bit harder because people might not know the origin. Yeah, it was Jerry Seinfeld ended up being the one on that one. So went through that, got up to, I ended up at 16,000. I had to use my audience lifeline at 8,000 because I didn't know the movie with, I think, Burt Lancaster and Deborah Carr, the one that's made fun of and countless other things with them kissing in the sand, the waves washing over them.
Okay.
And, I had never heard of From Here to Eternity as a lovely 19-year-old.
But I don't think I would have gotten that one either. So
I decided I was going to poll the audience. 87% of them said it was From Here to Eternity, and I decided to trust them. And that worked out correctly.
I think you can in the lower questions. When people start trusting the audience on the later questions, I question that.
Yeah, as I said, with the subject matter, I was like, okay,
anything pop culture,
like that would be good. Exactly. So, and then I was able to get, the next question was 4 states. It was which one of these is in more than one time zone. And I happened to remember because it was just after the 2000 election. And you remember there was apparently a whole controversy around Florida about whether Bush or Gore won that. And one of the things that I remember reading in the news was the fact that states started, some of the networks started calling the state at like 7:00 at night because the polls had closed in the Eastern time zone.
Right.
The Panhandle was still open.
Right.
And supposedly that led to a whole bunch of people, coming out of the woodwork and that, oh, shoot, we got to go cast our vote now. But me remembering that Florida was one of the choices.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I remember how to get that one. But then I had never heard of what kind of stew cioppino was. Again, 19-year-old kid who...
Don't know that one either.
Yep, I was like, 19-year-old kid who eats hamburgers or pasta and meatballs whenever he goes to the...
Ramen,
if my family took me out even to a restaurant, that was the only things I even looked at. I never looked at anything else. I was like, it's some type of stew. It was either beef, fish, chicken, or vegetable. And I called my dad because he had a bunch of people over and... no one seemed to know it there. I guess at the time they gave you 5 people that you were allowed to call, so you had 5 people on the line.
I never knew what the number was, but yeah.
At least at the time they were doing it. Yep, you could take as long as you wanted to answer the question. You could sit there for 2 hours staring at it if you really wanted to. They didn't have any time limits, but you get that one phone call, and as I said, apparently one of the 5 people I had on my list knew the answer. So. Was like, nope, didn't choose the right one that time. So I took the 50-50 just in case, because I don't want to leave a lifeline on the table when I'm walking. And I'm like, 16,000 is a lot for a kid. I'm not taking a gamble. Even though the math says gamble, I'm like, that's over a long term. I get one shot.
Yeah, but the risk is so big. I can't
give up $15,000.
That's a lot of money. Especially in 2001, whatever year it was. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Exactly. So I was like, I can't give that up, so that's where I ended up walking. So
that's really neat. Have you ever watched it back?
Oh yeah, we aired, and we had a party, of course, at the time. I grew up in a Catholic family. Of course, it was on Good Friday, so it was like, okay, we're having a party, no meat, all that stuff, but I was like, okay, well, we'll do it. So we gathered, watched the airing of it. I still have it actually on VHS somewhere around here. I keep saying to myself, I need to get that digitized, but I don't have a working VHS player currently. So it's something I have to keep reminding myself to try to do. I've got my dad has one supposedly I can borrow.
I know it's airing in reruns on the Game Show Network. Because it's one of those, So I so you should keep an eye on that. I'm like, for a while, I was just watching. Okay, is this gonna be the one that Fred's on? And then I'm like, no, I'm never gonna catch it that way. I think I figured out it'll be sometime in February, assuming that they keep on the run that they're on, which you can never trust. But
if you're looking for time wise, it was like 1 or 2 episodes. They went to at somewhere around that time to try to get people to view it and stuff, and try to get people to actually go for the million because they were on a long drought. They had a thing where every episode they were adding like $10,000 to the pool for that, and the guy won it like 2 or 3 episodes before I was on. So if you happen to see the thing go, because I remember they didn't tell us who won. They just, came in, and when they were talking about things, everything like that, and someone raised their hand, was like, isn't the jackpot like progressively increasing. They're like, nope, someone won it recently. We can't say anything more about it, but the $1 million is the maximum prize.
Yeah, so that sounds like a really fun experience. But yeah,
it was awesome.
Tell me about Wheel of Fortune. That'd be harder to find because, there's a bazillion episodes of Wheel of Fortune out there. Even if they reran it,
episodes out there. Yeah, no. That one happened back in 2010. I remember going into, just sent the email in every so often for when I saw that they were having auditions nearby, and got an email back saying, hey, guess what? You've got an audition in New York City on whatever day it was. So, we went into the audition. They had you do a few, they did like a round going through the room where they had like literally a board game level spinner at the front of the room that was their wheel that they would spin for you. And because they were trying to rapid fire hit everyone, try to see how people react, they would spin it. Once in a while, they would purposely bankrupt or miss a turn to jump to the next person. After, a bit of that, they then gave us a 20-question quiz, which I think I got about 18-ish of, which was enough to get to the next round,
what kind of questions do they ask for that? Because, it's not a trivia show.
That's basically, it was essentially like a mini hangman type of game. They would give you a bunch of final puzzles. They had five categories, and they gave you 4 questions, and it was, just basically identify these ones. I think they were just trying to see, can you, under a time crunch, identify, what the puzzles, some of these puzzles would have been. Nothing like Jeopardy. It's not like the 50 question madness there, but yeah, so they did that. So then they did the interview section where they they played a short game and interviewed you, and I was able to pull off the it just happened to work out great timing wise, because they were like, okay, tell us about yourself. Well, my name's Fred. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, originally from Rhode Island. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Colleen. We have a 1-year-old daughter, and we found out look down at my watch, 4 hours ago that we have another one on the way.
Oh, nice.
Literally the day that my wife just happened to take the test. So I was like, okay. And so I was like, okay. And when, everything was said and done, I was like, okay, I just, we'll have to see how things go. Obviously I want to get on the show, but, with my wife in that type of condition, depending on when you cast me, there's a chance I'm going to have to say no, even though things were. And they called back a week later, and the taping was just around the end of the first trimester. So we said, okay, flew out there. The episode aired 1 month later. So we kind of just decided, okay, we're going to keep things mum for about an extra month before everyone finds out, and let most people find out on TV.
And what was that like?
That was cool. I just remember in our room, at our house, we had a few people over, and, after the interview thing, there was just kind of a silence in there. And someone said, wait a second, did he just say that you're pregnant? And I was like, yep.
So you announced the pregnancy at the same time as showing everybody that you were on the show. That's pretty awesome.
Yep, pretty much. Although it was kind of annoying because, the people back in Rhode Island, not everyone got to see that announcement live, because I guess there was a governor debate that night. So it was like, okay. No. And even then we were living in Philly at the time, and my, I was actually lobbying since we had DVR at the time, I was lobbying, okay, I'm seeing that, Roy Halladay is pitching a no-hitter here in the playoffs for the Phillies. Let's keep watching that. We can watch this afterwards.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Nope, that's not happening. He actually did throw a no-hitter that night, so just random timing on it, but.
Well, yeah, now everybody can go look up that no-hitter and know exactly when all this aired, right?
Exactly.
That's pretty funny. Okay, so, back to video games. You've done a lot of, I looked up your challenge thing. Yeah. And there's a lot of tournaments out there. Not just Link to the Past, but I guess we'll start with Link to the Past. We'll get to Z1R and SMB3 because that's kind of the meat of what you do, but you were in that very first tournament, correct? And I couldn't find that one on Challenge, but I know you were in it because you were in a group, I believe. Were you in that group with Rick?
Yes, that was my first tournament. Was with Rick. Ninjembro was in it. Elminster.
Elminster later. Oscar later. Audra. Now Audra. Who's the fifth person? Was I think the one that isn't still playing. Is that correct?
I think Darko was the fifth one. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not even. I don't think still playing, but yeah, it was.
He does other things.
Tough group.
I know that name.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
totally know that name.
I just don't think competitive anymore. But yeah, I was gonna
Mhm.
say, I think they're definitely still playing games, and that was a wild group. It went to, I feel like Ninjembro swept, and then
I feel like Ninjembro was the one that got you.
yeah,
I wasn't paying attention, but I've kind of looked back at that group just because, like, 4 out of 5 people in that list are good friends of mine. So
yeah,
it's pretty crazy that you all were in the same group in the very first tournament and still playing today.
yeah. And then Darko, Elm, and I just the three of us, became 3-way tie. So we had to do a tiebreak race.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember that's actually the origin of me bombing the validation chest, quote unquote, because of the fact that Rick and I were playing, and it wasn't even planned. He and I were playing. It was just such a rough seed where I think both of us at the time, and it was version 18 logic, so it wasn't even like Ice Rod was guaranteed to be in Turtle Rock type of thing.
Yeah, I want to say like you could get a gold sword right away as a separate thing. Like it wasn't progressive swords yet.
Exactly, it was not progressive swords, but Rick and I both made a Turtle Rock play early for a Ice Rod. It was not there, so we did the full Turtle Rock dive at the time. When both of us were just not there, and at the end of the race, I think both of us were a bit frustrated, and just independently, without having planned it or anything, we both bombed the chest on the way by, just to say, okay, I am done with this. And
oh my god!
Since then, that's kind of been a thing.
Yep, and you don't do every tournament, I've noticed, but your name does show up a lot in tournaments. You were in the Swiss tournament, correct?
Yes, I was definitely in the 512.
The 512 Swiss, the infamous.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was a journey.
How did you do in that one?
That's actually a very good question.
Let's see if I can pull it up.
I was going to say, you may be racing me on that one because I'm trying to remember this. There have been a lot of tournaments throughout the years. I know I did okay. I don't think I made brackets, although I could be proven very much wrong.
Link to the Past. No, it's Key Sanity. Look, you did that one too. There it is. The 512 Swiss. Let's see how fast my internet can bring this one up. I mean, I remember when that was happening. It was before I had started being a major player, and by player I mean commentator.
Yeah.
Look to the Past. I remember watching some of those races, and I didn't know behind the scenes. I just remember looking at the speed gaming schedules and just like all the different races, because it sounds like they got a lot of them on the air. We'd have to ask Rick about that one, but my internet's going very, very slow.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I remember.
It's challenged, but yeah.
Yeah. They did an amazing job, doing that, especially considering that was back, like, speed gaming, I felt like still was...
I think it was just 2 channels at the time.
Infancy, but yeah, exactly. There were not a lot of channels and stuff.
They might have had 4 channels by then. Not like the 6
they may have started
that we have now.
Yeah.
Technically, they have 8 that have aired, so yeah.
They've done amazing stuff.
We'll have to phone Brian or whoever to get this thing to actually pop up, because it's just not. But you definitely did that, and any other tournaments in Link to the Past that are memorable for any particular, like, what's the best finish you ever had that you can recall?
Probably the in-person 2019 Speed Gaming Live, because I remember getting to. I think I got into the quarterfinals and then got wiped out quickly because I think I drew. Oh man, who did I draw? I drew someone who was. Oh, why the heck is his name currently escaping me? But I drew an incredibly strong player. And so I just got knocked out of that one really, really quickly. But
there it is. I just found it. No, that's Legend of Zelda. It's Zelda 1. We can even talk about it. Looks like you won the Zelda 1 tournament that year. So
I did. Yep. That was quite a tough tourney there. There were, I think, 8 of us who ended up being on site for that. So we ended up doing a best of 3 single elimination tournament. So I think I played Elsoa, I played Jake Hoper, and then the battle against Jam that started because of the fact that they were, Speed Game was trying to air, obviously, all of the tournaments there, the finals that day, and we drew the short straw and were the last ones to air, and we started playing at about 11 p.m.
Wow. Yeah, I think
It
that
went
year there was some sort of agreement with Twitch that they had to be like on basically all the time. So I
Yeah,
know
no,
they were
and so they
recording
were.
stuff to play later and a lot of that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, no, it was a cool thing that again just going with it. But again, we started at 11 p.m. and it went to best of 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
We
very
didn't
late,
finish
very
until
late.
3:30 a.m. and I know Rick and I were on a train at like 8 o'clock that morning.
Oh my
So
god!
it was. I don't remember a lot about that night. I remember apparently in level 9 we were both in there and I bombed a wall that apparently Jam didn't bomb or something like that. Ended up being the main difference there. And
I mean,
that
isn't that
path took me there.
Z1R find the bomb
It
wall?
is. Oh, absolutely. I guess,
I
and it's a
still
great thing to have that be the end.
I still want you, like we talked about this at the last SG Live, I still want you to make the boomerang tell whether a wall is bombable or not. Give the boomerang a use.
Yeah, I'd have to see. I would have to see exactly how the best path for that would be to see if we can change the sound on that. Certainly, theoretically possible.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if that's
everybody starts picking up boomerangs if you make that happen. It's suddenly, I mean, you think about it. Like I didn't. And well, I guess we'll get into Z1R, now since it's come up. But like, you made the book useful in the game. I was assuming at the beginning no one picked up the book.
Oh yeah, that used to be an item that no one wants to pick up. For those who don't know Z1R, since we're going to guess that some people listening to this podcast haven't done a lot of that, what the book does is it takes the magic wand, which normally shoots a magic beam across the room. Yeah, it's a phenomenal weapon. If you happen to hit an enemy that it can damage, it actually does mid sword level, the white sword level of damage, so 2 hit points per. The wand itself is almost like a white sword substitute for most enemies, and the damage can do things there. But what they decided to do with the book was to allow it to give magical power, so that way that beam, if it hit an enemy, would turn into a burst of flame, which theoretically would then cause additional damage to everything. Well,
including Link.
Yeah, the enemy's iframes don't exactly mostly run out, are mostly still going during the time that flame is on there. Most enemies are not weak to the fire. And as you pointed out, Link takes damage from the fire. So for most people, taking that book is a detriment because it doesn't help you. So I remember Jam actually was one who had suggested, I think half jokingly at one point, what if you replaced the book fire with, explosions? Like a bomb or something like that. And that was the origin of the boomstick. So we added that one in, and for balance purposes, just because it was way too strong, we said, okay, we're going to put the book in a shop and make you spend a lot of money if you're going to buy it.
Yeah, and money in Z1R is very different than money in Link to the Past.
Yeah, those who have played retro mode experience it a little bit, but you still, there's so much money in... There's so much money in Link to the Past that most of the time the arrows don't really, if the money part for the arrows doesn't really affect you.
As long as you don't, completely use your silvers, you're fine money-wise.
Exactly. But Z1R, it costs ₹1 per shot of an arrow, and you have door repairs that take 25 away at a pop. As you said, there's a hard cap on they keep the gold rupees in an 8-bit number, so you are hard capped on 255, which again, decent amount of the time works, but it can be very tight at times trying to keep your money, especially if you're using a lot of arrows. So
you said it was Jam that came up with the boomstick, but who came up with the idea to have it be a translator?
I feel like there was someone in chat. I want to say Crimson Avix may have been the primary person who said something like this. He either said something about the Atlas or the book. It may not have been exactly the way that it was originally said, but just it clicked something for me in my head. And so I released both of those at the same time. So there's an option that lets the book basically give you all maps for the dungeons, which is really nice. Absolutely, because if you don't know what the dungeon looks like, closest thing I could think of for Link to the Past equivalent would be something that tells you, okay, here's how the doors connect to each other for those who do door rando. Yeah, something like that.
Because Z1R, the most popular mode is shapes. And that is the closest thing to that in Link to the Past is door rando, although that's its own monstrosity.
Just a little bit there. But so we came with that one. And as I said, the idea was just to do that. And I know when I first coded it, the first version I did accidentally gave you compasses as well. I was like, okay, that one's a little overpowered as it was working. So we fixed that one to do that. But then in the process, someone happened to just, as I said something that jogged my mind. It was like, okay, well, what about making it almost like a Rosetta Stone? So that way, hooked on phonics style, where if you have the book, you can actually understand what people are saying to you. And so in that mode, if it's on, if you don't have the book, all the old men in Hyrule just say literally the exact same thing to you, like "okay," or other things like that, or "lupa" to go to a Final Fantasy 1 reference. And then once you get the book, well, now they can talk to you and give you hints or other things. And hints in Z1R can be pretty strong. I know they're a little bit more neuter than Link to the Past, and they're not played with as much. But
I played with it in version 30. I wish I could say who said this, and I think it was someone in chat, or maybe it was a commentator. I forget. Well, because version 30 was, hey, the new thing is we have hints. And version 31 was, hey, we can turn hints off because they were so bad. But the hints in Z1R are quite good.
Yeah, fortunately, it's well enough where we can say certain hints are in, or certain items are in certain levels, but you got to still find it in that level, and most of the time those hints might just be it's a useless item. Or if you're playing with the heart shuffle on, which shuffles in the boss heart containers, then maybe it's on the floor in that level. You still have to clear every single room to find it. So
and the hints, there is a map that tells you what area each hint refers to, but then you get hints like I forget the one that says the recorder is needed. Which can mean that there's a dig dogger blocking your item, or it can mean it's at a recorder spot. So it does kind of narrow things down a bit, but it doesn't completely tell you everything. Like I feel like it's a pretty good balance.
Yeah, it definitely has some good balance on that, especially where, those hints, it's like, okay, it works. And it's actually technically possible sometimes for that not to be a hard requirement. It's just that you need a special item, and that's one of the ways to get there. So I've had people complain to me, oh, this hint's lying. It's not true. And it just turned out the other path was actually bow locked. So you could get to the item you needed one of the two. Yeah. You just had to get one of them. So
yeah, I remember in the last tournament, in the last main tournament with the random percent, it was always kind of fun to figure out whether hints were what kind of hints were they, because sometimes they were false hints, which is a thing that can happen.
That was a fun little thing. I literally threw that in at a last second on an update for one time, because I was just like looking for something to differentiate something. Like I just doing a couple minor bug fixes. I was like, let me throw something in there. I was like, oh, I think I can make it so that way like half the hints lie. And like obviously that you're playing that mode unless you're in the random thing. And then that way, okay, you still have to decide, is this hint actually telling me the truth? Or is it
worth following, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which, I mean, again, that's where the 50% line I like, because, if they're all lying to you, okay, you just ignore them. They're just garbage. Yeah. But when about half of them are true,
that's right.
Well, okay, I got to keep that one in mind, but do I hard follow it?
Yeah, and we learned like the strength hint. I think that may have been during the Rookie Rumble where the strength had got a few people, because it also applied to the graveyard spot, which not everybody knew. So there were a couple of things like that. But overall, I think for I know there are other games with decent hints, but they're not the ones I play. So I feel like the hint system is pretty good in Z1R. But, we kind of got ahead of ourselves. Tell us about how Z1R, the randomizer, even came about. I before you do that, I will say this: I had wanted a Zelda 1 randomizer for much longer. Like I remember, because I don't know if you ever played the Atari game Adventure.
Oh yeah,
Level 3 is a randomizer. I don't think it has logic, because I remember not being able to always finish it. But I thought, hey, we have Quest 1, Quest 2. Surely they could randomize this. Now, I have no computer programming background, to the point where when I got my PhD, I literally lost an entire semester to a typo. So I would have no talent to actually do this. But you do. So tell us about how that all got started.
Yeah, well, I mean, the nice thing ended up being actually was inspired by it based on Lack Attack. Runner of Z1R, world record holder for many times. Has played everything. Many other, pretty much any type of speed
name
run.
a Nintendo game, and he's probably played it.
Well, he's also got his own mission, not to advertise for him,
yep,
but he's thing where he's trying to speed run a game from every single official licensed NES game or something like that. But he was playing Zelda 1 at the time. He was trying to do this, and I'm sitting in an airport, I want to say in St. Louis, like coming back from a work visit somewhere, and it's 10:30 at night. I'm taking a red eye to come back home. And I remember him playing, and he was just commenting as he was on his way to level 9. He just happened to say something to the effect of, this game's fun. It's fun doing this, but it's doing the same thing over and over. And he was, he made like that type of comment of, I wish there was like a way that, someone could, change that up so that way you could basically get that fresh experience again that we had as a kid. And now, to be fair, at the time, the ones that I knew of, I only knew of 2 randomizers at the time. I had seen there was a Pokemon randomizer that I had seen years before, or at least a couple of years before that, because I know that was a couple of years before I moved back to Rhode Island. I'd been living in Philly for several years. And I know technically that was my first stream on Twitch was literally 30 seconds when I was at my home in Philly, just testing to see if I could actually connect to a stream. But I never streamed again for like 3 years after that. So, so I knew that one existed, and I had seen, I think, a Super Metroid, a couple of like early versions of some of their randomizers. Like maybe a Desi rando. It was one of Desi's, definitely. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I'd seen of them. But I was like, well, let me research this. And so this was back in the times, not that everyone will remember this, where Wi-Fi was not exactly viable on a plane. So I literally downloaded, I ended up finding the data crystal thing for Z1's thing. So I was looking through all that data. Like I downloaded that before I got on the plane. It was supposed to sleep, but spent probably half the flight like looking at this type of data. Like, oh gosh, this is actually kind of viable, because at least according to the urban myths, Z1 was originally supposed to be a build your own dungeon thing.
Oh,
so it was actually like originally they were going to like basically allow you to
Mario
build
Maker,
your dungeons.
like what, 40 years?
Exactly, yeah. And so they changed their mind towards the end, I guess, and decided to do the quest, and then, oh look, we have so much room left over, let's put a second quest in there as well. Essentially, I knew the story about why second quest coming in, and I always enjoyed second quest, but for a lot of people it's too hard, just like we were talking about earlier. Yeah, well, as I said, and for me it was a case of when I was looking at all that data, like I discovered like the layout of a room, like everything that's in a room technically is defined by 6 bytes. Talk about modern day stuff where you have thousands of bytes. This was a 128K game, and each individual room you could define with 6 bytes. Like 1 byte was what room, what are the items in the room? There were 1 byte that had, okay, these are the north and southern doors, as well as which palette do you use for the outside of the room. Another one was like east-west doors and the palette for the inside of the room. I could be flipping it, but giving you the general gist. One was, here's the enemy set in the room. And because we wanted to have too many enemy sets, not just, okay, this is the enemy groups that'll be in here, but how many enemies are in the room? And we need a little bit more, so we're actually going to borrow one of the bits from the room byte. So they were like literally compressing the information in there as tight as you can. There was 1 byte that has, what item is in the room, but it also has flags for how much, is the room dark? Is there a boss roar? Or there's 2 different boss roars in the game. So all those are all compressed in like, 1 byte. And I think the final byte was, where does the item drop in the room? Like, is it dropping, in the center of the room, other things? So they literally, the entire thing was laid out really nicely in tables with 6 bytes. So it became a matter of, as I started trying to explore things, well, it's all in nice tables. It's not like I'm trying to hunt through and find, okay, well, where exactly is this 1 byte, as you have to do with some games. And we're able to then start saying, okay, well, if we start making these tables and changing them, that all of a sudden, okay, now I can change what is in a room, or I could change around where the items are. And, it started simple. The very first like race I think I did with Lack Attack, J. Coper, and I think Cantaloupe, it was actually, an SRL race that just got classified under Z1 because there was no randomizer thing at the time. But literally that was a race where we just shuffled just the key items. And it
With
was just the dungeon key items.
All the dungeons are normal in normal locations, I assume.
Yep, normal locations, normal rooms in each dungeon. Like you had to take that same path. I hard coded my logic for, this item needs to have such and such item for it. And I didn't, there were early seeds that come back to me because, yes, I covered the case that the ladder can't be in level 7 because you need the ladder to get to the item in 7. I didn't cover the case for, the recorder was in 7. And you need the record. The recorder's a bad case for that example, but the raft is in level 7, and the recorder is in level 4, which needs the raft to get there. So the logic's evolved over time, just because we've kept finding these different types of cases that were in there, and just seeing things, and then started moving things around. Ironically enough, we're having this conversation today. A friend of mine posted in a Discord a picture of me walking into the Triforce room in level 1, which was actually the Triforce was in the room it was supposed to be in. It had been replaced with a vertical shoot room. So I walk in from the left side. There's the Triforce in the middle with a giant wall in between me and the Triforce.
And no way to get to the
bomb the walls on the top and the bottom. Yep.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Just a little bit. We've had a few of those types of things, or a ladder sitting in the middle of one of those Chevy rooms where you literally need a ladder to get to the center of the room.
I mean, I suppose you could do beatable logic like Link to the Past does, and have that ladder there. But
I'm not going to lie, that's something that's in the back of my mind as a potential option for the future. Again, almost all the stuff I try to keep as an option because my mind, I want anyone who picks up this thing to at least have a chance of being able to beat the game without glitches. Because it's not fair to say, you have to block clip to be able to do this. So because some people.
Interestingly enough, you've now made there's a new flag that makes it so if you turn this flag on, you can't block clip. So I thought that was really interesting.
I still got to make a fix to that because there's still some minor issues with just the way that it is, because basically the way that the game works, it's essentially got subpixel type stuff on it. But if you want to think of it that way, but the idea is that the game checks and says, if you're exactly 5 pixels from the center of a screen, going for door transitions, for example, then when you walk to the left, now we transition to the screen. But when you are, the way that screen scrolling works in Zelda 1 in general is that basically because it's on the grid system, if you're a certain number of pixels away from the edge of the screen and you hit a vertical direction, Link's going to turn around and try to get back to the grid. And what ends up happening is just the way that it works out, because Link sometimes moves 1 pixel, sometimes moves 2, similar to what we see with Link to the Past, that since it's only checking exactly on that line, you can get Link to walk over that line without actually causing the screen to or without the game realizing, hey, we need to transition to the screen. So that's kind of where that whole, at a very high level, the screen scroll thing comes from. And block clips are the same idea. And so, it basically just, I think Fiskbit, who has done a ton of work with Z1 types of mechanics, and pretty much has more detailed knowledge I think anyone in the game, anyone in general about the Z1 ROM, had come up with a fix for that. So I leveraged a good portion of that, although we've had to fix 1 or 2 small things as we've been going through here. So it's a nice little feature in there to try to, again, allow people to race and not have to say, I'm stuck, or I'm playing against someone who can screen scroll and everything, and the sword's going to be up on Death Mountain, and we start all the way on the right side of the map, and the screen scroller can just jump over the river easily and go get that sword without a problem. Now at least people have to fight, at least can be on a little bit more even footing it. But again, it's an option. If people don't want to play with it, they don't check that box.
I want to see next time they do a random percent tournament, I want to see that as one of the things that can show up, because I think having, going into a seed not knowing could make it really, really interesting. Not screen scrolling this one.
Absolutely. No, I can definitely see that as something there. And, our community's been great in terms of how they run these different tournaments. And there's a number of people who stepped up for a number of different tournaments here. So, and we actually have a bunch of other tournament formats. We've obviously got those main tournaments that spring up at the start of the year, but there's also a number of mini tournaments that go on, like Battle Royales.
There's always something going on in C1R, as I've discovered.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of those cool mini tournaments that go on, and they just play on a system. They'll either play Battle Royale style, where you do a race each week, and the last person gets thrown over the top rope and eliminated. Not that I follow wrestling or anything, so don't that. But also, it can be a case of some of those tournaments have been using like Mario Kart style scoring, where you go in and at the end of the week, 15 points to the winner or something like that, and they use that for a number of weeks for the tournament. So it's actually a really cool, as I said, just a little tourney system that they do to be able to have lots of fun little short tournaments there. And you can get some interesting ones. There are some that do evolving flag sets over the week. Whoever gets eliminated gets to change a flag. So those lead to some very unique ones. There's some that have been done where it's basically a routers tournament where each week you get the whole seed, you get to play it for as much as you want during the week, and you basically mini speed run it, and you set like an hour of PB attempts at the end of the week, and during that hour, whatever your best time is counts as your time for the week. So there's a lot of different tournaments that people have come up with. There's one I'm in right now actually where it's each week you're playing, it's the Mario Kart style thing where it's just whoever happens to win, you get a certain number of points. But what they're doing is each week you pick one of the other people in the tournament, and that's like your secret opponent for the week. And if you beat them, you get extra points.
Oh, nice.
So you can actually, and it's different flag sets every week. So there's a lot of sitting there and thinking about who do I pick for this week, because I can't pick the same person twice, but I want to, I've got to decide, which week that one person is really good. Which one of these weeks is my best shot at them? Or do I just pick the week that is my weakest flag set and just play them on that week? So that way, expecting I'm going to lose that one and save the other people for weeks where I think I can beat them. So you can get a lot of gamesmanship on some of these. And it's actually really fun just to see this variety of tournaments.
Yeah. And of course you have other projects that you've worked on. So you have the SMB3 Randomizer. We can talk a little bit more about that. But also the Unhundo Z1. Have you finished that one yet?
I've got to actually just do a couple of last, I think, runs of it. It's just
what's the term?
Unhundo. Yeah, the Unhundo. So yeah, there's a hack for Super Metroid, which is where we got inspired for this, which basically starts you with everything. Yep. And you have to put everything back in order to beat the game. So I'm working on something like that for Z1, where you literally start in Zelda's room. She's not there anymore. The very first thing you do is you go fight Ganon and end up putting the Triforce of Power back, and then slowly working your way backwards through the game, trying to get rid of everything. And it's definitely it can be a lot more puzzle-ish, because you don't think about certain things until all of a sudden you realize, hey, wait a second, to return the Master Sword, I still have to have 12 hearts. Oh, shoot, I just got to 11, or I gave up the raft. Yep, I just gave back the raft, and there's still a heart that I have to return on the raft island. So things like that just are interesting there. So I'm trying to finish that one. Yeah,
so I feel like you got Quest 1 working pretty well. I remember Quest 2 being pretty baffling, though.
Quest 2 is tough. Mainly, I think the key logic was the main piece of things is the fact that there's a lot more locked doors, there's a lot fewer keys available, and money is incredibly tight on that version, because
there's only one 100 secret. So
there's only one 100 secret, and on top of that, you have life or money rooms that you can only return money in this case, at least in my mind.
Yeah,
because
no turning in hearts, because you got to turn them in elsewhere.
Exactly. So you got to turn all that money in. You have to turn in. You have to buy still a number of different things. So
2 bait blocks.
Yep. Although you can get around that one, you can still only have to buy 1 bait, because you can. If you up-A when you use the bait, there's a glitch exactly where the bait will stay in your inventory. So it clears out the enemy, but if you do the up-A before and death warp essentially before it removes it from your inventory, it stays there. So you can get away with just one of those, but there's just a lot of money that you have to spend and not a lot of money available on the overworld. So had to balance that one a little bit. At least this time, I think I've got it in there now where you'll start with more money in the second quest, just to prevent you from having to try to sit and farm at a take any road or something. Yeah, exactly. We want people to have fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
so that's kind of the plan.
Okay, so let's talk about SMB3. That was, I assume, after Z1?
That was a few months after Z1 when I first released that one. I think there were some other runners in the community. I remember Skybills was one who was playing a lot of SMB3. I think there was a version someone had made of an SMB3 rando, but at the time it really didn't do that much. So I ended up getting interested in that and starting digging into it, so it can randomize what levels are where, randomize what enemies are in the levels. That was a fun bit because of the way that the data in the levels was laid out in memory. Randomize, the different forts. Eventually started adding in, randomize what world you're getting to. So there's a lot of stuff. Randomize what pipes lead where, which leads to some fun stuff with some of the later levels, like the pipe maze in level 7 and World 8 itself. Things like that. So there's been a lot of cool little bits and pieces there with that one. So that's also been a really fun randomizer. I need to make actually an update that I've been starting to work on a little bit for that. I've got to actually get some of those fixes in when I find free time.
Yeah, I mean, considering how much trouble we had scheduling, your free time is pretty precious, I would assume.
It's tough. Got 3 girls who are starting to get closer to the teenage years. And strangely enough, you would think, the early years of life are where, as a dad, you're not going to have like the free time at night, but they go to bed, they they go to sleep, and then I can come down here and do some stuff in my office or stream and stuff. Nowadays, like, Dad, I'm going to a friend's house, I'm going to need to get picked up at 11. Or Dad, I still have about 2 hours left homework left, and I need your help because I don't understand this. So stuff like that, and I'm not saying no to my kids. I gotta help them. Not. So it's all of a sudden the free time actually has been harder to come by lately, and it's because of stuff like that. It's like always felt like, when they get older, they get more independent, then you don't have to worry about that. And no, it's kind of been the opposite, especially for the time frame they need me.
Now, do they play any video games? I remember when your wife was, I want to say, playing Z3 or Link to the Past.
Link to the Past. I was tweeting about that one a lot. Yeah, because it was just funny, especially when she first got to Moldorm. I started posting about it just because I knew there were going to be falls, and I knew there were going to be lots of falls. So I did like a mini, kind of live tweeting thing of when things were happening as she would pick things up here and there. It was a blast to watch. My girls definitely play a bit. I mean, they're mostly modern consoles. They've been playing like Switch games, everything like that. Although they still like watching me sometimes play some of the older games, like mainly for the purposes of some of those like Paper Mario games. They do enjoy sometimes watching some of those older games. Although it's kind of funny because I had Grand Poo World for Super Mario World has been a game that got released. Barb released a new version of it about a month ago, I want to say, and people have been playing that one a lot. I downloaded Grand Poo World 2 like a little while back, and every once in a while I'll put it on trying to see what I can do to play through to get to the end of a level or something like that. I've literally beat, over the couple of months I've had it on there, I've beaten the first level once.
I mean, that's some serious heavy duty Super Mario World, purposely difficult. But people like it, so I've been watching. We talked about Lackatech. I've been watching him play that a lot, and a few other people. It's
one of my daughters loves watching those best of compilations that Barb's done of people playing the game and their reaction. And so yesterday I brought her down to my office to show her, I actually beat the first level in the game, and she's like, yeah, right, no. You couldn't have done this. Show me. So I play through a little bit of the first level, of course, keep dying. And she's like, no, give me that controller. And she sits here for 15 minutes trying to figure out how to get over, and for her, the accomplishment was just getting over the first big jump, in the level, and just landing on the platform, even if she couldn't make it any further. But it was just fun. She's like, you say to me, last night when she was like, okay, I have to go upstairs now. She's like, but tomorrow I'm going to come down to your office and I'm staying there for 7 hours and I'm going to figure out how to beat this level. I'm like, I don't think it's going to quite work that way, but no, they enjoy playing their games. They're not necessarily speed runs yet, men's mindset of, I'm going to grind these for the fastest time, but they'll play and you have to have a special mindset for speedrunning, and I know I don't have that. So I can see the beginnings of it. I could possibly see they like playing things like Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu together, and I'm like, I can kind of see a little bit. They play casual, but I can also see a little bit of that. Okay, let's try to get this part done quickly. Type of mindset in there. So I'm like, I'm also have to myself maybe I should learn that speed run at some point just to be able to be like, okay, kids, let's show you exactly how this is done. By some of those fast runners, and then really I think that might really connect with them and open it up to that new generation of speedrunners would be when they start seeing games that they know actually beaten really quickly.
Yeah, because if even now when you watch like GDQ stuff and it's still a lot of older games. It's the newer games. Yeah. Although to be fair, Mario RPG, the new version has been out. It came out the same day as Barb's Grand Prix World 3, which is kind of funny. There's already speedruns with the new, people are already speedrunning it. So, Dread, Metroid Dread took like a week, not even a week. I think it was days, and like Tears of the Kingdom already has speedruns. So people definitely get to it faster. But I feel like the you think about what are the most popular speedrun games, and the first one that comes to mind is Super Mario Brothers 1.
Yeah.
Like, literally, thousands of people have a speedrun of that game. And then Super Metroid is also over 1,000 people. It's just like, and those are older games. Those are I won't say they're the two most popular because I don't know. I haven't looked it up, but they are definitely up there, and they're old games.
Oh, absolutely. People say, okay, I want, this is a goal. And as you said, exactly, it's a case of, this is one of those standards. I have to do that. I mean, I haven't even done SMB1 just because I know platforming I am not very good at most of the time. Yep. That's one of my weaknesses. But, it's definitely things like that. Like when I first started playing Z1, I was like, okay, even for the vanilla game, like, okay, my goal is going to be get this under an hour. And then, okay, well, that ended up not being that bad in the end once I had a route and was able to get through things. Okay, now I'm going to aim for 45. And then slowly changing the target along the way. And then, okay, let me try maybe some of these other games too. And now I've got 2/3 of the Zelda trilogy from the old consoles. I just don't want to ever play Zelda 2, yet alone have to do the sub 80 on that.
Zelda 2 is like the one game where I would just flat out tell people, if you play it, just use save states.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'm like, if I wanted to go for it, at some point I should do it. But yeah, it's just, you're right. It's not, it's a good game.
It's a good game, but it's not a fair. Yeah, it's not a fair game is what I always tell people. It's a fun game. It's a good game. It's not a fair game. And I feel like they could tweak a few things and re-release it and it would be a great game. But I don't know that that's ever happening. But we'll see.
That could be the new next remake. Maybe Nintendo will listen and all of a sudden we'll get that out. So
yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. So one of the things that's really interesting about your stream, you have probably the cleanest stream of anyone I watch.
Oh, thank you.
Like son of a monkey, for instance. I mean, is that just because you're just you have a family, you have kids, you don't want to like.
Yeah, I kind of never really swore, mainly because I knew, especially like I'm one of those people that once I get into a habit, I kind of stay in that habit. And I always wanted to try to make sure that when I had kids and stuff, that they weren't, if they hear those words, they're not hearing it from dad as he uses that all the time. I'm going to work that regularly into my thing. I mean, again, I get it. People sometimes swear. I'm not going to stop watching someone just because they swear. But at the same time, too, I know there are some people out there who don't want to be hearing swearing. So, I've always tried to just teach myself to not use those words where I can avoid it. And that way, at least, again, try to at least set them up so that way they don't have to be hearing it from me. And it won't be like a case of me getting a call from the school. Hey, your son or daughter, daughter, I guess in my case only, has been, is going to be, has been swearing up all over the place here. And like, at least this way I'll be able to say, well, they didn't hear those from me.
And so where specifically Son of a Monkey, where did that come from?
I am actually not sure how I started saying that. And the funny thing is, it's like, they keep a counter of it on my Twitch channel. Like that's developed over time. I never intended for anything like that. It was literally a case of apparently I just would say that when things were happening. And I think Crimson Avix at the time had set up his bot and had it in my channel. And apparently I was saying it so often, he just decided to add a command in that if people said, whenever I said it, they could type in chat and increment the counter. So that way, because of how often I was saying it, and I didn't realize just how much it slips out. And as I said, it was, I think, probably one of those replacements. Obviously, we know what that's replacing, but just one of those replacements I had developed, I think, just over time and just happened to be one that, well, I apparently use a lot.
I'm not going to say I don't swear because I do, although people are surprised when they hear me because I don't swear on commentary. I always try not to.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate creative replacements. You know, a lot more than just way too much swearing.
Yeah, there's, never see her on Twitch because she's not a streamer or anything. But my sister-in-law, she would go to karaoke bars and just sometimes just I'd go with her and with my wife and stuff, and she'd go up there to perform, and she would take some of those songs that definitely had a number of those swears in it, and she would just on the fly had the talent to come up with completely random stuff to throw in.
Nice.
And it was hilarious. Like, she is probably the most talented person I can think of for that type of on the fly replacement, and was just amazing. She's just amazing at that.
All right. Well, since this is a Link to the Past themed podcast, I do want to kind of bring it back there. So you and Rick kind of are a little tied at the hip in a sense, since you've all been on the same team in League, the Bomb Squad, right?
Correct. Yeah. I was gonna say it's been like 3 or 4 seasons at this point. Maybe I've lost. I want to say 4 seasons, I think, at this point.
Easy to lose track.
Yeah.
And how has that been? Like, I know your third member has kind of switched a little bit over the last several years, but like this year was better. You didn't have to, like last year, I remember talking with Rick. He was so worried about relegation. And then this year, you guys had a shot at the playoffs late in the season.
Yeah, we got lucky this year. And basically just ended up happening. I think a lot of that ended up being, turn order. We're definitely not top tier necessarily players, but we're at least, I feel like we're competitive enough that we can certainly give things a run for their money depending on what the matchups end up being. And last year, just I think with the order of games that came out, like we drew the first couple of weeks some of the toughest teams, and I think we may have had 1 or 2 bad breaks in there as well, but basically that just forced us down into that relegation line just from that, and we were able to get through there. I think I remember Rick and Orange there, the two of them pulling off a couple of really key wins in week 7 to help us sneak through without getting eliminated. And then this year, I think we got a couple of good lucky matchups on the early side of the season, so we were actually able to be in good shape there, which ends up being nice because you can be a little bit more relaxed during some of those things. It's not okay, I'm tense, I'm in trouble, we're about to get eliminated. It's like, okay, we're in the driver's seat. We can win. Just do our best. And, if we lose, a lot would have to go wrong at this point, for some relegation to happen. And, it ended up, again, it was tough because I think the final week we had a really tough draw this time. So we didn't make the playoffs, but, it just ended up being a very different mindset, I feel like, from the previous year. We were able to get a few good early wins there, and it really helped us to get through there.
Yeah, so, I feel like there was a point in the season where in that division you were in that everybody was tied. Like there were like 4 or 5 teams all tied with the same record, like a 500 record. Like,
it was something
4
like
5 and 5 or something like that. It was just it was
late
pretty
in the season,
crazy.
Exactly, there was a lot of possible teams that could have made it through, and definitely, I think almost any of those teams there had a shot there going into the last couple of weeks. It was really cool to just see just how many of those. I think we actually had the shot of like a 7-way or an 8-way, like pretty late in the season, like there was a non-zero chance of a very, very complicated tiebreaker for like a week or two, and then it fell apart. But
it usually does. But it's always fun to speculate when those things happen.
Yes, when you're 5 or 6 weeks in, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's still a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of teams that have a chance to do it. That's where you really want to see. I tend to view a lot of these tournament things a lot more from the spectator side, not necessarily on a you want to. For the broadcast side necessarily, but just from the people who are, the people who are watching the sport, and seeing how things are going and giving, having that blowout potential. Okay, great. Yeah, that's fine. That's wonderful. But when you have, okay, there's a lot of possibilities here. This team could win, or, this team wins. If this team wins, the other team wins, this third team loses, and there has to be a tie over here. Things like those types of scenarios where it's not impossible. It's not like let's locked in. Those are the ones that I love to see, that type of stuff happening. I feel like that makes things was really interesting. And so that was great for this season, getting to see a lot of that stuff happening where there were a lot of possibilities out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this wouldn't be the 216 podcast if I didn't ask the question about tilt. So generally, the last question that Fear likes to ask, and I'll ask it of you, is how do you handle tilt? What gets you tilted? How do you handle it when it happens, and how do you get through it?
Well, it's a tough one. I mean, I can get tilted, especially on low percent type of scenarios. I'm good, especially linked to the past stuff of, put me into a fight against Mothula, give me a tempered sword. Okay, I'm probably going to get through, hopefully give me at least a couple of hearts extra so that way I can dodge a couple of spikes. Ideally not be on fast ROM so that way I don't, I actually have some lag so I can react to those spikes coming out. But
yeah, that's going to be a thing of the past soon, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm aware. I'm aware. But I'm like, that type of stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm not so bad. But, low percent having to go in there and do a Mothula fight, it can be kind of tough. And I am the type of person who will sometimes decide, going back to 90s movie, to almost tin cup some of those plays. The Kevin Costner movie there, which, became famous because he had a chance of winning. He had a shot over the water that was incredibly difficult, but he could have easily, in that situation, gone for like 2 shots going around and then putt in to win, and he would have won the tournament. But he wanted to shoot that ball over the water. And he ended up, I think, getting like a 13 on the hole, literally his last ball before he would have been disqualified. And like, I kind of get into that mindset is, okay, I have to do this. And, I get tilted sometimes when that happens because I've recognized that. And so the main thing for me is just, okay, I have to, at some point, realize, okay, I got to cut my losses. Gotta go get my safeties if I can, or even just, okay, we're going to go check a couple of the other checks. I will eat the time to come back here. But it's tough. And fortunately for me, at least, usually I can disconnect one game to the next. So, like, okay, we lost. Okay, I'm good. I'm actually good. Okay, that's not a big deal after the game. But like in game is where that tilt really can affect things. And just I've been better over time of just recognizing, okay, this is not something that I should be doing right now. Let me actually go somewhere else and get this done. I probably already lost the race at this point anyway. That's okay, sure. And just, at this point, I've started to say with a lot of these tournaments and races that I'm in, like, okay, I'm here to have fun. It's not necessarily, I would love to win. Don't get me wrong. If I don't want to go into the thing saying, okay, I want to lose the race. But, if I lose, there's more important things out there. And having fun is definitely far more important. So at least with that type of mindset, it helps reduce that tilt. But yeah, it's just, I just have to try to consciously realize, okay, I'm tilting. I'm in trouble here. Okay, let's try to back this off. Think logically. What can I do to make this fight work? And usually I can get through it. So,
all right. Well, that was a great time. Again, I'm going to thank you for joining me today, Fred. And I don't know when this is going to be out, but it should be sometime this week. And
awesome.
So we'll end it there. And thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a blast. Always good to talk to you.
I hope you all enjoyed the conversation I had with Fred as much as I had bringing it to you. The plan is to do one more guest host interview during Fear's break, and by then the new year will be almost upon us and Fear should be about ready to go with Season 5. Again, thank you to Fred for doing the interview, thank you to Fear for giving me this opportunity, and of course, thank you all for listening.